Uh, so Arjun sir and Vaibhav, sorry for the delay. We are just starting in 5 minutes. So Gokul sir will be joining us along the way, but we will start with the introductions and we can move a little bit in the concept in the meantime. Would that be fine?
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Thank you. So we are already live, but I have not shown our screens right now. So yes, he's also joining. I'll just see. Okay, Gokul sir is also here. Hello, Gokul sir, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Okay. So we're all here. I think you know each other. So it's kind of a you guys.
Good to see you again, Gokul. How you man? How you doing?
Good. Do we have Vaibhav? Oh, Vasa is here. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think there's a delay.
Great. So I'll just
There's a delay on my side, but
okay, sure. So I'll just kickstart with the conference. Just a minute. Please confirm if you guys can see my screen.
Yes.
Yes, we're able to see.
Great.
yeah.
So just starting off with a fancy code I found online, nothing original from my side. Security is always excessive until it's not enough. And I think this is appropriate for the topic that we are here for today, DeFi security. It's one of the major concerns right now, especially considering how much traction DeFi is gaining and in which direction it's going, right? We are all hopeful that it is going to be the new face of finance. So, but the thing is that currently DeFi security is a major concern. And today I am joined with three speakers, three esteemed speakers, I would say. Firstly, I have Gokul Alex with me, one of the top blockchain influencers in the world. He's the co-founder and CTO of Gigamish Garage Ventures, chief architect at Somish Labs, and co-founder of several other blockchain initiatives. I can just go on. Second, we have Mr. Arjun sir. He is the VP of Growth at Polygon. Polygon, previously known as Matic. It's a blockchain platform which is essentially solving the problem of scalability, and again a major issue in the DeFi world that we have. And lastly, we have Vaibhav with us. Vaibhav is an avid DeFi developer and researcher. He's the co-founder of Signy Advanced Technologies, and he possesses extensive experience in the development of DeFi and smart contracts. Right. So I'm sure we all will be, you all will be thrilled to gain his knowledge also. So, getting directly, I'm sorry if things are a little bit faster in the starting, but I'll just get into it. So, hello everyone. Hi Gokul sir.
Hello. Hi, Harman.
So, I would just like to kickstart this conversation with you. So let's 2020 has been a real roller coaster ride for us all, right? With COVID and all, lockdowns and all. But it is quite amazing to see how DeFi has grown beyond imagination in this year, right? So before we start into this, what is DeFi? Like what are the security aspects and all? I would just like your views on what exactly is DeFi.
Yeah, it's a great question, Harman. First of all, thank the Quill Audits, Quill Hash, and all Razors and all the organizers for inviting me. First, to be part of this premier conference. Second, to share the panel with Arjun and Vaibhav. Both of you have done extreme contributions to the blockchain ecosystem in India. It's an honor. So DeFi is it's something like the 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 real open finance through decentralization technologies. Right? We have looked at the world of finance. There has been so much of inefficiency, lot of redundancies, lot of convoluted intermediaries in place, and that has the world of finance on its own weight. If you see the world recession that happened in 2009, that was a scenario when we all realized the absurd abstractions in place. The have been implemented, right? The credit default swaps, hedge funds, mortgages, they were all sinking on its own. The world was in a perplexed situation, right? So this is the situation because it was not in the financial ecosystem, but because of the tools that they're using built over the last 20 years, they were really not scalable enough, secure enough. They were not transparent enough, trustworthy. This was the time when world realized from the basic notions to the most advanced financial primitives. We are now getting into a black hole. We are not sure where the money is going, what is happening to a credit. So this is the scenario where the world of finance was heading to. And powered technologies. Finance is in a renaissance or a revival. This is what I would like to call as decentralized routes, or the seeds of decentralized finance is clearly from the cryptocurrencies like the Bitcoin, others. But the experiments, like early experiments like the platform experiments like Matic Network and Raiden, and they created the launch pad for doing advanced primitives. And then great like MakerDAO, Augur, they created a new experience that finance on the top of decentralized protocols, platforms, and products. So this is like coming together of technologies and advanced future-forward financial primitives. So, right, this is like the convergence of nowadays talk about CFI and DeFi. That itself
Yes.
is there is nothing called central devoid of DeFi. We had all the CFI for 25 years. What we are now seeing is everything is coming to decentralization because all the primitives inefficient in the world of there is a huge escape velocity.
Yes.
There is a huge escape velocity on which there is a huge flight of money, flight of credit, flight of assets, collateral to the world of decentralization. powered by the layer 1, layer 2 and ecosystem. This is how I would like to set the context for DeFi. What do you know, man?
Exactly. Absolutely, sir. Greatly put. Couldn't have been put better. So we are moving towards a future where we are void of any central authority, so to say. There may be their role in some aspects, like it will unveil as we progress into the future. But right now, what we see is that more trust and transparency in the network, so that things such as the economic depression that you mentioned, they don't repeat in the future. People don't lose their own money just because a centralized bank made some mistakes, right? So it's great to know that. And you mentioned Matic also in your conversation, and I think this is a great chance to learn about Matic also. Arjun sir, would you like to please educate something about Matic? So I'll just set a brief context. When people talk about DeFi, they normally think that Ethereum is the only platform. Everyone starts thinking about DeFi like, okay, Ethereum and Solidity. Like we have to develop a token on Ethereum, we have to develop a use case around it or something like that. But there are several other platforms, I'll not say several other, a few others, which are genuinely creating a better ecosystem. And Matic is one of them. And we are thrilled to have Arjun sir here with us, right? So Arjun sir, please.
Sure, definitely. So I think, see, with any sort of finance sort of use case, right? So I think the easy way of, or rather the mental model you can put behind this is to follow the money, right? So why do people talk about, New York or sort of as the center of finance, or even London for that matter, and few other cities? Is because all the power, or rather all the money is sort of, you could say, flowing through these, sort of centers, and sort of they end up becoming the capital, of finance. Now, in the decentralized world, it's a little different, right? So in decentralized world, there are none of these banks, none of these investment banks, none of these people matter, because they're not the ones making the decisions. The decisions are being made through code, right? The code, which is there in the smart contract, is the ultimate arbiter of what will happen in a particular, sort of financial system, right? So in this case, for example, if you want to do, let's say, staking, or all the other different things which happen within decentralized finance, like swaps, all of this is controlled by computers rather than people. And this is kind of how it becomes decentralized, where this kind of finance becomes peer-to-peer versus, being run by centralized authorities. Now, of course, like when I said, follow the money. So clearly, most decentralized use cases will be built in places where there is maximum liquidity, right? Where there's
Exactly.
maximum amount of money, and then when there's when there is money, you can, or liquidity, you can then mobilize that, right? And then you can sort of build sort of, you could say, products around it. And this is kind of what happens in centralized economies of the world as well, right? So for example, in India now, we are seeing that the markets are, sort of doing well, and all of those kind of things. There are a bunch of different financial products, like mutual funds, SIPs, ULIPs, and all of those kind of things. Similarly, the decentralized world, you need liquidity before you can start sort of creating decentralized use cases. And this is why everybody goes to the Ethereum ecosystem, because it is by far the largest ecosystem out
Absolutely.
there, has the most amount of money as well, has the most amount of developers working on it. And this is kind of why it has become sort of the mecca of DeFi, where there is a lot of decentralized finance happening within this particular ecosystem. Now here, of course, there are multiple ways, how you can implement decentralized finance, right? So within Ethereum, since there's a lot of money there, there's a lot of development there. What has happened is that the Ethereum network over a period of time has suffered from a level of congestion, right? Because there are a lot of people transacting simultaneously. It's a global network, and
Exactly.
again, it's decentralized, right? So anybody can transact. This is not like, sort of a centralized system where only a few bankers are there who are sort of transacting, making all the money, and everybody else is basically just reacting to them.
Exactly.
This is global. Anybody can do anything. So when you operate at this scale, right, clearly you need to be able to build the kind of technology which can sort of perform or be performant at this scale, right? Millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people transacting simultaneously, right? And this is something which is a little unforeseen. So I can't say that in spite of very fast computer networks and computational technology, like these are some of the things we're still sort of figuring out as we go. And this is kind of where other sort of solutions, like for example Matic. So we were previously Matic Network. Now we have sort of expanded our scope and mission, and we've become a bigger company now. We our name is today we're called Polygon, and I encourage you to check out our website, polygon.technology, to learn more about what our plans are in the future. However, so what we kind of realized even back in 2017, that this network congestion, that when you have hundreds of thousands of people, sort of transacting together, it will lead to sort of, you could say, performance problems within the network, and which will hold back the entire ecosystem, not just
Absolutely.
decentralized finance, but like
Yeah.
many other use cases. So
Yes.
our focus was to build a kind of technology layer which would allow for scalability, right? So you could have your core technology, which is your Ethereum, and then you build like a scalability layer on top of that. And then this scalability layer allows for massive scale. So hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people transacting at the same time, all the different kind of tools and utilities and all the different kind of sort of infrastructure you need to make this a reality. So this is kind of what we've built, and that is what is Polygon. So Polygon essentially has taken the Ethereum core technology and essentially built a scalability layer on top of it. And this allows sort of the Ethereum ecosystem, which is the largest and has the most amount of liquidity and the most amount of money, to essentially now be able to tackle those use cases at scale. And this is kind of where sort of layer two technologies come into play, right? So what is Polygon? Polygon is a layer two sort of approach towards scaling Ethereum. So Ethereum is layer one, and then there's a layer on top of that. So this is kind of how we
Basically,
solve it. Yeah.
So basically, people used to build on Ethereum. So everyone used to build dApps on top of Ethereum, and there were so many dApps that the transactions at a single time. There were millions of transactions. The network got
Right.
congested. When
Right.
we hear about so much, like people end up paying more on the platform than they are transacting.
That is
So
true.
that's the kind of thing happens. So
No, definitely.
Matic is kind of on top of Ethereum. So let's
Yes.
say there is Matic, and on top of Matic there are different dApps.
No, definitely. So on Ethereum, for example, if you had to do a transaction today, it would cost you something like $30 or $40 to do one
Yeah.
transaction, right?
Yeah.
On our like on Polygon, previously Matic, you can, for $10 you can do close to 2 million transactions,
Okay.
right? So the
That's really
scale is thousands of
scale it.
times
Yeah.
beyond what is currently available today, right? And when you bring, and the network is really fast, so every transaction is confirmed in 2 seconds. So if you click on anything, that transaction is within the blockchain, it's final in 2 seconds. So when you have very, very cheap and very fast transactions, all sorts of interesting now use cases which are possible in the centralized world now also become possible in the decentralized world, like high frequency trading, or for
Yeah.
example, building those kind of very engaging DeFi products where things are changing, and then lots of transactions are happening, and now millions of people can do this together at scale. So that's kind of what
Absolutely.
we've been able at Polygon.
So scalability is obviously the first, first characteristic that needs to be there for
Definitely.
DeFi to compete with the existing financial structures such as Visa and all, right?
No, definitely, right.
It
Definitely.
has
Because
to accommodate that kind of scalability. That
100%, because we keep having these discussions about getting millions of users into blockchain, but for that you need the infrastructure to be ready before you
exactly,
can bring them on, right? So this is kind of what we really want to do, is we want to be able to offer that same Web2 experience, which is your Netflix, Uber kind of experience, but in a
exactly.
Web3 environment,
Web3
which is
environment.
like within the blockchain. Yes,
That's the real adoption where it lies.
exactly.
So would it be like, this is an open discussion question I just had in mind? Would it be an inflected view that banks have to adopt DeFi if they want to survive in the future? I have seen recently many news where a lot of banks are pitching into Bitcoin and Ethereum and in central bank digital currencies and all of this. So is it an inflated view? What do you think?
Weber, what do you feel
Yeah,
about this?
I think they need to get into the DeFi space, because first of all, this gives you a level of transparency that has not been before yet, because like till now, let's suppose in in early 1990s, you had Fed. At that time, before Fed, people knew a lot about how finance works. So people did like resist coming in of Fed, and and we all know the story how Fed was formed. It was not a something that not a process that was public. That was made up in a remote island. And these just met and formed this Fed, and just passed. And since then, people have been put away from the transfer of how the system works, and over the generations, people now don't care how they invest, and where their money is going, because like you are working a lot to make that money, but you really don't think
Exactly.
that much about like where my money is going. And
Exactly.
like
There's
I
no
think
transparency in that.
due to the like 2008 and 2009, so like this has like chain of events in which people now like care more about like where and like I see DeFi as an extension of like this sort of a movement. Like people are trying to care more about their personal finances and like take back where their money is going. So yeah, like if banks want, they have to like merge with DeFi. They can. Right now, the state of DeFi is like if you are using DeFi, like it takes around like a month hold of what's going on, because like there's multiple levels of like uh, new things that you have to learn. First of all, it's blockchain, how to use MetaMask, and like how like the transactions work, and like, why I'm paying so much as something so new for the people, so that like they just don't understand it, being like 30-40 dollars for a single transaction. And then there are and also just the volume of products that we are seeing in developing for the people. So right now I see thing like that replaces like the Wall Street, because like we like all kinds of like complex, like simple to complex instruments like options and futures, that sort of brings like builds the backend of the core finance. We are
For
starting
finance.
to see that people are trying to build much more easier ways so that investors can come in. If yeah, so like in following that, like the banks have to like get into this game.
Yeah, so we have seen a lot of things related to this. For example, security token funds and crypto derivatives. They have been
Yeah.
extremely popular recently, right? But the thing is that while we are all clear about this, that DeFi has this much prominence in the world and it is moving towards a very bright future, a very big roadblock in its journey is security. Many people are not
Yeah.
aware about DeFi security, and that's why we have seen so many hacks. Like 2020, the second half of 2020 has been filled with hacks. Whenever I used to type what's new in DeFi, there's a hack, right? So there has been a lot of hacks that need to be stopped, and for that, we need to understand and we need to, educate people about what is the security aspect of DeFi. So uh, let's just firstly, I would like, any views on this growing hacks in DeFi, the concerns around it.
I think it really comes down to so any new technology. So of course it comes down to what you define as a hack in the first place. But I think any, for example, financial system, right? Like for example, what we've seen with decentralized finance, that is being built from the ground up today, right? So there are bound to be some growing pains where things will go sideways, right? So now there are different kinds of hacks. So one is the kind of hack where, for example, there was something wrong in the code and somebody took advantage of that. But there are other hacks as well, like flash loans and things like that. Now those are kind of hacks which are, to a large extent very difficult to prevent, right? So for example, I'll give you an example. Even in centralized markets, like let's say in Sensex and all, there are stocks which get pumped and dumped, right? So and people who have a lot of let's say liquidity have the ability to pump up a stock and then dump it as well. And
Yes.
and this happens on a daily basis, frankly speaking, even with penny stocks. So is this a hack, or is it just a sort of a function of the way the system is designed, or that people who have more liquidity can in many ways influence things. So similar things is what we kind of see in DeFi as well. So then there is the hack where there is a there were issues in the computer code and people took advantage of that. Those to a large extent are being solved through audits. So for example, if you can get your smart contracts audited by, let's say, a bunch of different people who can look at all the different things within the computer code and figure out what can go wrong, what can go right. And the best advantage, the biggest part, the best thing rather about decentralized finance is that the code is also open for anybody to view, right?
Yeah.
So you can actually, it's not like you need to get it audited by a closed group of people. You can actually get it audited by the community. to that extent, right? So that of course, those are problems which are being solved. Now, how do you solve the problem where people with a lot of liquidity find ways to influence market events? Now, there are ways around that as well. The advantage of decentralized finance is it's decentralized, right? There's no central authority which has power. So there are ways to combat against this. But I do feel that a lot of the, how do you say, stories around hacks are, I would say, overblown. They're in any day less impactful than what we see in the centralized world with hacks and sort of ransomware attacks and malware, and pretty much every other day
Exactly.
some application leaks the private information of the users, and it happens literally on a weekly basis. So it's definitely a lot more secure than that. To some of Vaibhav's points, like how we can make it better, how we can make it more easy for the user. For example, in the centralized world, we have simple things like change your passwords regularly. So in the decentralized world, how do we create those kind of systems where people can protect themselves as well,
Exactly.
from malicious actors. So those are some of the things which are being figured out. There are solutions around that. But I do expect to see that decentralized finance will go through its own growing pains.
Exactly.
And yes, things will go sideways. But what I think overall, if you look at the entire picture, I think things are a lot more positive than, I think sometimes what they're made out to be. So that's kind of what my view on it is. And yes, the system will become better with time. So yeah.
Exactly. So when we compare DeFi with our existing current financial system, there are always some pros and cons. There are some reasons to adopt it. There are some reasons, as you mentioned, that people can just put in money and just get it out altogether, and it hinders all the value. But the thing is that DeFi currently has a lot of potential, when compared to the financial system, and that's what makes it so special. Its potential to be a better financial system in all aspects. So when it comes to this small security hacks, like which are not as much compared to the central system, but still they are there. And the concern is that these hacks can also be stopped. They can also be combated, right? So, but before we move forward, this is just one question I had in mind, and I think most of the audience will also. What exactly is DeFi security? When we hear the word security, what we think is firewall, cryptography. We think okay, antivirus. So for security, we think these kind of things. But DeFi security, as I understand, is much different than that. But I would like your views on it, please.
So
Yeah.
apologies.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear, sir.
Yeah, yeah.
Let me add my points. I second most of the views said by Vaibhav and Arjun. When you look at DeFi security, some of the fundamentals uh, are essential, like the security of wallets, security of your protocol, block time, security of randomness that you use in your security of your infrastructure. It has to be good. So the fundamental blockchain security is the essential requirement. Security of the client, security of the public private keys, and security of the randomness that you use, security of your consensus algorithms. But on the top of it, the security in DeFi is very a very complex scenario because you are dealing with smart contracts which are interacting with each other heavily and which are interacting with the real world heavily. For example, a lot of smart contracts are written in DeFi space which need to get the Oracle data or external feed, the feed from price feed, or it could be fiat feed or it could be crypto feed. So the kind of attacks on the DeFi protocols, we could classify them into crypto physical attacks or crypto physics attacks. I would like to say the attacks on oracles and etc. are attacks on the physical aspect of the cryptography. And there are crypto economic attacks, like the logic that you write in your flash loan or that you write in your DAO, the way you call your DAO, or the way you execute a flash loan, the way you decide the distribution of your wealth, all these aspects. These are the DeFi security is more than the blockchain security. This is about security in a market or security. So there is a huge difference in DeFi, the DeFi and the basic blockchain. The basic blockchain is all about data structure powered by cryptography. But DeFi is all about a market powered by financial primitives. So these are very nascent. That is the reason why. So you have to understand the premise. Like, the world of cybersecurity or the cyber attacks are very, I would like to say, they have been here for at least 10, 20 years. There are a lot of exploits. Like, it's very easy to replicate exploits from one language to another because the fundamentals of programming remain pretty much same. Unless you go to some functional language like Haskell, or you do programming on very advanced functional programming, formally verified programming languages, like maybe you do on Viper in Ethereum, or you write your smart contracts on Rust, or you write your smart contracts on WebAssembly or Haskell. In the case of Cardano, right? Cardano has introduced smart contracts on Haskell, and Viper-based smart contract coming up in Ethereum. So then hacking will not be that directly easy, but Solidity is a very, very general purpose language. It has been created to make it like a very easy programming language with a lot of flavors of inherited from Java, a lot of flavors from JavaScript. So this is like a very fertile ground for any average or any even below average hacker. You don't need to be a really sophisticated hacker, like a Linux hacker who work on the kernel vulnerabilities. Any below average hacker itself can attack DeFi because DeFi has been built with so much of composability in mind. Like, you make money like a Lego block. That's the whole premise on which you engineer DeFi. So it's like, you are attacking a kid, a new kid on the block, because it's a fancy kid. It is having glittering kid, it's very shiny. Yeah, let's attack it. It doesn't show any kind of mastery of any sort from the attackers. It shows that they are very naive, very, I don't want to use the specific word for the people who attack the kids, but my point is, that's what's happening in the DeFi space. If you're daring to attack the basic blockchain stack, attack Ethereum 2, attack the other protocols like Monero, Zcash, that's what you're daring to do. But DeFi, if you're attacking, you're killing someone in the nascent stage. It is not proving anything. For that matter, it's not proving that DeFi is not secure. It is proving that this is in the early stage, that everyone working in the DeFi space knows pretty well. So I would say the attacks on DeFi, it's clearly with evil intentions, to be precise, because even hackers have certain ethics in mind. Good hackers, right? The good hackers who attack kernels, right? Good hackers who attack OSs, right? They have some mission in mind. They show the world what is kind of an insecurity we have. So what really we need in the world of DeFi is, like, we are seeing so much of innovations, like people like Chainlink, Matic, and Ethereum Foundation is doing, like Web3 is doing, ZK rollups, Starkware. All of them are coming up with different approaches to DeFi security. Some of them applying ZK rollups for security. Starkware is coming in with their approach. Matic is coming in with very strong hardening on Heimdall and Bohr, and they're hardening using optimistic rollup. So there are different innovations in this space. The current attacks on DeFi are not infrastructure attacks. They are purely crypto physics attacks and crypto economic attacks, which is not proving anything about the vulnerability in the DeFi infrastructure. So this is my point. Primarily, I would like to highlight flash loan attacks Oracle attacks and attacks on the DAOs. They're only proving that Solidity as a language needs lot of rigor, lot of security hardening in the coming years. That is the only key takeaway for me when I look at the DeFi attacks.
Yes. No, excellent points, and it's truly amazing to hear such views. So it's like one is hacking, they are just uprooting they are just killing a plant which is going to bear a lot of fruits, right? So it's a plant is just growing, but yes, the concern at the moment is that even if it's growing, how to protect it, right? So smart contracts, as you said, and as we have heard up till now, they are the most integral part of our DeFi ecosystem, right? So everything is connected either directly or indirectly with smart contracts only. So what is the role of smart contracts in the DeFi security? I think you well explained this concept already, Gokul sir, but still, I would enter the jury members for their comments on this role of smart contract audits in DeFi security.
No, definitely. I mean, if see, in a world controlled by code, right? Essentially, how strong or how well that code operates is essentially everything, right? So even when you talk about blockchain, it's essentially computer code. And of course, when you have these kind of when you have people writing computer code, clearly there are going to be some consequences which should be unforeseen, right? And this is kind of where audits come into play. So just to take make audits easy to understand, essentially audit is just, for example, if I write some code, then if Gokul, Vaibhav, and you sort of just also take a second look at it, so that, because all three of us will look at it from a different eye, and we will be able to sort of simulate and figure out what are some of the different attack vectors somebody could use. That's essentially what audits are. And now, of course, audits have to be done by extremely skilled people, right? People who have seen lots and lots of different kinds of smart contracts, who have some idea of what are the different attack vectors. So, like, for example, Gokul talked about, like, 2 or 3 different ways, how you can sort of look at attacking, like, sort of DeFi protocols. So have we covered for those? So I think audits is something which is going to be a necessity. I think even with more advanced programming languages, which have some security features built in, so just to give an example, like what we have in the centralized world, right? Like, for example, you had C++, where you could do anything, and then you had Java, where it operates within a virtual machine. So you have inherent security right there.
Yes.
So there will be within code as well. There will be many ways to solve for security, but even then, audits are going to be very important. And what the world requires, at least what the Web3 world requires, are a lot more auditors. So there's a shortage of auditors, and that has made audits slow. It has also made them very expensive. So that means it also puts it out of the reach of, like, let's say, an average programmer, like, let's say you or me, who want to create something in DeFi, and then you need to pay, let's say, $10,000-$15,000 for audits. So it's obviously difficult, and it's an impediment to the DeFi space. So these are some of the things which need to be solved, I think, as time progresses. And I think Gokul brought up some very interesting points, how you can also design the inherent protocol or the approach in such a way, like what optimistic rollups does and what CK rollups do, that they are inherently secure.
Yeah.
And you solve for already many security problems already, and now you can just look at or think about solving for crypto physics, like based attacks, like people have liquidity or they exploit oracles which are supplying real information. So I think audits are going to be very important, at least for the next foreseeable future. Maybe there could be, I'm also seeing like a level of automation into this. So a lot of people who are into smart contract security are coming up with automated ways which simulate many different kinds of attacks, and thereby, you can greatly reduce the amount of time to audit and also the cost of audit. But then these things will sort of take time, just like how in the centralized world you have softwares which sort of simulate various attacks, like injection attacks, etc., things like that, to check whether your code is secure or not. So we're seeing the same thing in the Web3 world, and I think as time progresses, things will become easier and faster. So that's kind of my view. But audits are extremely important for any, like, I would never invest in a DeFi product which has not been audited in some form or the other. So,
We specifically check for that audit in the website, right? They have to put it here.
very, very important. Very important.
Yeah. So, Vaibhav, you have been, directly involved in the development, extensively in development. So, what are your views, like from a technical perspective in the smart contracts? What are your views?
Yeah, so like I'll just cover through all the I lost my connection a few seconds, like for a few minutes. Like I'll
Okay.
just I didn't listen like what Gokul said, but like I'll just reiterate on some of the points. Like just too many projects coming in, so like it's obviously that the order that much, and also like it sort of takes some time for the audit firms to gain, so that like people can as abilities to audit a like code, and like that's why like things are there's like month like several months of wait list for like trail of bits and others. Is that like whenever you get audit for a smart contract, the usually don't know is that like whenever you submit the specific version of your code, so like you have to freeze your code like before you go to an audit.
Version,
So
yes.
uh, so the problem like as DeFi is moving really fast, so like you can't actually like stop your, so like you'll be building continuously on your code. So like when your audit comes, like it'll be a month or like weeks of process. So like even when your audit comes, like already made a lot of changes to your code. So
Yep.
people need to understand that like even if this is a process that should be ongoing, like not just like code updation, but also because of the composability of the DeFi. Suppose like your code remains the same, like you just created a project there being used, like let's suppose Uniswap V2, and a lot of projects are using your like your code. So that the thing is that like, this ecosystem is so composable, like your this like contained within your system, like it can come from like it's quite hard in terms of that, because like this is something that hasn't ever before, because like in no like point in time like a system of finance where like different banks and like institutions are coming together and like working closely at this scale. These are the problems that we haven't seen like anywhere yet. So like there's a lot of these avenues to like solve how to safeguard your contracts from like other projects. So I actually quoted this in one of my tweets, is that like secure smart contract is the one with the most trust issues. So that
Yeah. Okay.
that's a really good quote, because like even if yours like if there's like let's suppose 10 smart contracts in your own project, like each smart contract should not trust any of the other smart contracts or any other external address. So like even if the smart contract is from your own like on your own project, because like any like at any point in time like anybody could replace your contract in some like unknown way, and like it could call your contract. So like adding like whenever you write a contract, like there's a lot of assumptions that you make. So like you have to careful about those assumptions, that like you are totally sure that like these assumptions will not break in any sense. So like this happened with the Yearn, because like Yearn is one of the projects that I admire a lot, and like they have like most used code in the ecosystem. So, like the hack that happened to them, like it was not something that was problem with their code, but that was a specific situation in which that happened. So like they had to uh, migrate from V1 to V2, like they had to reduce their withdrawal fees to 0%. Otherwise, like people would have hard
Okay.
time like paying like fees for their withdrawals. So
Exactly.
they just decreased their withdrawal fees, and that like that happened for a few days, I think. But like within that window of few days, like someone figured out a way to exploit the system. So like this is
Okay.
some sort of assumption that they made, that they won't like reduce the withdrawal fees at any point in time, but like that's how like the system works. And also a new thing that is happening is that like as the audits are getting more expensive and like people just don't have enough money to pay for the audits, and so there's a lot of initiative in terms of peer reviews, which is quite underrated in my opinion. So like I think there are at least two known peer review DAOs that I see, so where like independent or like developers from the DeFi ecosystem
Okay,
can
okay.
come, and the
Sure.
projects can put bounty, and like, yeah,
Okay,
that's
so
I think what. Yeah.
it's just like Gokul sir mentioned, like or maybe so it's like you can get it from community rather than
Yeah,
going for a private organization if you don't have the money. But the important thing to consider is that audits are not just one time thing; you have to get it frequently. As sir mentioned, that this is a nascent stage. Obviously, when it grows, you have to grow with it. You can't just stay at a single place, right?
No, definitely. I mean, this whole
yeah,
thing didn't exist until 2 years ago. So
Yeah.
so they're bound to be like, our current economic systems have been in play for over 100 years, and they're still terrible. So you
Yeah.
can, so it's
Yeah, yeah.
there
Can
will
I
be
add
some
one
growing
point?
pains, and yeah, there will be ways, people will try to game the system, but then that's how,
Exactly.
that's how the system will get better. So yeah.
It's getting difficult for people
One
to
more.
stay in loop, right? It's gaining so much traction. Absolutely.
Can I
Yes,
add one point,
absolutely,
Harman?
absolutely.
See, I really appreciate the fact that audits are very, very important. One, from the perspective of the due diligence, the seriousness that you apply. And I'm sure the audit will become more, perhaps we will have Chainlink like a model for audit-based simulations and audit infrastructure in the world of, like, we are now seeing a lot of infrastructure enablement in the DeFi space, like more Alchemy coming up, more chain links, all of the like more Oracle systems coming up. Likewise, audit and assurance infrastructure could also scale up. But one key point I would like to highlight is there is a possibility for obfuscation of smart contracts, which is not much solidity. Perhaps I've seen Vitalik talking about obfuscation in a few blog posts. I hope if we introduce obfuscation, it could improve the runtime security even after the audit. For example, obfuscation will help you to obfuscate the layout of the smart contract. Data flow obfuscation can be done. So there are multiple levels of obfuscation that we can do in a smart contract, retaining the ability to do formal verification and generation of proofs, runtime proofs from the system. There are organizations like formal verification, runtime verification, which is doing formal verification, which they have done for protocols like NEAR and a lot of protocols, right? So that really helps the formal verification and the obfuscation together. So the benefit of when you say the contract should be readable, so this is a question like readability, reusability, and referability of code. It should be open source. Right? Everybody should gain the knowledge, should be able to build the ecosystem further. But in the runtime, how much of the smart contract you want to be readable? It's important that it's repurposable, reusable, referable. But in the runtime, if you have at least some amount of obfuscation, you can secure the smart contract from great many logical vulnerabilities or physical vulnerabilities. That's my other suggestion in the DeFi space.
Absolutely, sir. That perfectly makes sense when we consider a complete scenario rather than just sticking to one part. So, what I would like to ask is, like, okay, audits are obviously the most important thing, but as Gokul sir mentioned, there are different aspects of security that you have to consider. From the aspect of smart
Yeah.
contracts, what would be the best practices? So I think Vaibhav already answered most of this, the versioning, the structure, like uh, like the withdrawal example. But what other things a smart contract developer should do to ensure that his DeFi application is not that vulnerable?
So I definitely feel that so one of the things which we're seeing these days, right, and this exposes sort of a new kind of vulnerability is that there is also a lot of DeFi, sort of contracts which are being built, which also refer other smart contracts, right? And I think Vaibhav touched upon this as well, that the vulnerability may not be with what you writing, it could be with the other smart contract which is also included in your application. And this becomes even more difficult to control sometimes when you're doing things like cross-chain communication, right? So let's say you're trying to bridge liquidity from, let's say, EOS or Cardano and Ethereum, right, and essentially give everybody like a sort of more liquidity to play around with, and so for DeFi, sort of DeFi smart contracts are now trying to pull liquidity from different chains, and everybody wants to be multi-chain. So each blockchain, right, has security sort of built in different ways, right? So fundamentally they're still the same, but in terms of how the execution environment works, in terms of the languages at play. And I think these are some of the new areas, right, where you want to be as cross-chain communication becomes more popular and more protocols do this. You want to start seeing more of these interesting kind of attacks where an attack on one chain essentially gets propagated to another chain and to another smart contract. So I think these are some of the new vectors which I think people who are creating smart contracts need to think about. That if they want to be multi-chain or cross-chain, then how are they going to protect sort of their users who are spread across different blockchains, who all of which are using maybe to an extent different security paradigms.
Yeah.
So I think those are some of the things which you need to consider, when you're building. And then of course, like, this comes into the versioning aspect of what we've talked about, where, if you do it version by version, you reduce the chances of things going wrong, but then you also increase the cost of audits and the time to market. So how do you balance something like that? And then how do you sort of add new features without exposing sort of your core construct of what you built as a DeFi product, right? So you maybe start with staking and farming, and then you try to do different things, and then that becomes sort of sort of not secure. So how do you solve for these kind of things, and how do you control sort of time to market and costs while you're doing this? That of course is not an easy problem to solve, but I feel that these are some of the areas which now developers need to start thinking when you're developing a smart contract. That it may not just be you; it could be some of the other contracts which your smart contracts are interacting with, and that's kind of where the vulnerability could lie.
So things like Oracle manipulation and
yeah.
the security hacks, right? They're very common now.
Exactly, no, definitely. So oracles, I mean, is one of the attack vectors. There are a few others as well. There are multiple ways you can gain. I mean, sort of game oracles, as one might say, right? Depending on the kind of data sources which are being used. Because ultimately, the oracle's data source is being sourced from 2 or 3 different places, maybe at best, right? What if there's something goes wrong there, right? And if it does, whose fault is it? Right. So how do you like solve these kind of problems, right? Is it the programmer's fault? Is it the protocol's fault?
Yeah.
And of course, there are other ways to solve for it as well, right? There's also insurance for smart contracts. So it does, depending on the number of audits you have, maybe you need to insure it less, and then that's how you can protect your users against potentially, some sort of at least financial loss. But yeah, and those are some of the ways you can.
Even I didn't know about this insurance thing. So as Gokul sir mentioned, right, this is a growing, like tremendously growing technology. So we are not aware about everything that's going on.
No, smart contract insurance is pretty popular. I mean, if you can,
I don't know. I
just look into it. There's some very very big players in this insurance sort of market, because people realize, right, that these hacks are going to happen one way or the other, regardless. No human being can be 100%, can look at 100% of the different angles, and as human beings, we tend to be very creative as well. That's the strongest power. So so the best way out, it's like in the centralized world, is to have insurance. So I think Gokul could maybe talk about how some of that works as well.
Yeah, I have a few more. Thank you, Arjun. You have highlighted very important points on how we can make it more secure. Like, there are some specific things that we can follow as Solidity developers. Like, there are good design patterns available on Solidity, which gives you good awareness about the best practices in writing Solidity. And I was just thinking, what if, like, we nowadays ERC like standards have become so popular and widely accepted, even beyond the Ethereum community. Like, when other communities are introducing, be it Cosmos or Polkadot, they are
Binance
also looking up to ERC standards, right? And point is, like standards, if we give the same or better visibility and appreciation for security standards like ESC standard, something like ERC, ESC standard, and then looking at the contract and which level stand security is this contract level on. Like then if you have a grading of contracts based on security and then gamify it or provide incentives, just like now in Ethereum 2, we have a penalty when you are unavailable as a node operator. Like we have added like when some node is slasher, there are some game theoretic penalties added to Ethereum 2. So likewise, if we can have some specific nodes in Ethereum who are like getting incentives guarding the protocols, this could really, like, just like the validator model in the Ethereum 2, if we have some guardian models, this could also incentivize security. And because, like, I'm not saying decentralize the concept of firewall by introducing nodes. So one suggestion is giving more visibility to security standards and including them in the EIPs. Ethereum improvement proposals could be a great appreciation for the work all the great auditors are doing, like from Quill audits to consensus to Trail of Bits. All of them have been doing so much of work, but that is not standardized now. Like ERC standard, if we have standards for Ethereum security, and if we have incentives for node operators to be guardians of the firewalls in the ecosystem, it could really, like, you have incentives for running a Chainlink node, you have an incentive for running Filecoin node, like, so why don't we have an incentive for running a guardian node? And so these are the kind of thoughts I have in my mind, but I'm saying more we discuss about it, like this forum, it would be a great step, and I'm sure that, like, from education to evangelism, right down to the basics of education, like when you're using external calls, we use so much of external calls in DeFi protocols. So if we have we need really good education. I hardly see I've seen only very few young solidity developers looking at the design pattern. But when we all started our Java developer career, we were all looking up to design patterns in Java. But I'm not seeing that rigor among solidity developers to look at design patterns, even perhaps because of the speed at which we are coding, or the wave, DeFi wave is really so fast. But at least if this is a basic determinant or primary, standard in the ecosystem, it could really improve and secure our protocols.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and for the insurance bit, I think you should, if you want to read about it, you should check out Nexus Mutual. So Nexus Mutual is the de facto leader, and then you should also read how the founder of Nexus Mutual got hacked.
Okay.
Yeah,
making the case for insurance even stronger.
Yeah,
exactly.
So that
That's
was
in YouTube. You can see. Yeah.
crazy
That's
episode.
true. I'll get into this just after this. No, that's really wonderful to hear, and this incentive idea for this, another node. This makes perfect sense. If we have incentives for people to do transactions, right, we should have incentives for people to maintain, right, or to maybe standardize something, or maybe standardize, you can say, audit standards. We can have different incentive models for that. Like the community can work more like it's just involving the community more into something useful for the community only, right?
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
one question that I think most of us have, like
Okay.
most
That's
of
like,
people, exactly. Yeah, please go ahead.
yeah, so like, I think there's a big lag because, like,
I guess your network is not working properly. Okay, I lost your voice.
Right, but I guess the TLDR is that there is literally no way to
Exactly.
so see, this is not a core problem, right? It's a human problem. So how do you do that? And we live in this world of already like stolen identities, deep fakes, and how do you even get somebody on the webcam? Also, we can literally not know sometimes who
Yeah.
that person is. So, and of course, but I do feel that, quality auditors, have so this industry of audits and even smart contracts, because it's a bit small, is sort of run a lot by reference, right? So essentially, like for example, if somebody's got a smart contract
Exactly.
audit done, then people tend to ask him, like, okay, where did you get this
Well,
done? And then he'll point. So this becomes very reference led. So that is one way where you could sort of figure out like through references how authentic the audit team is. Also like to look at what are the different protocols the audit teams have worked on, where they come from. I think another very important question which you can ask any audit team is what kind of process do they follow for the audits, right? So are they just looking at code randomly? Do they have like a 4 or 5 step process? How does this process help? And I think those are some of the things which you can look into, but really, I think
exactly.
there is no magic answer
This
here.
goes both ways. This goes for the audit teams as well. If they are good in auditing,
Absolutely.
they need to establish a presence in the market. They need to showcase that okay, they do this, and this is why they are authentic,
No,
right?
definitely, definitely. So I think yeah, past experience, just like how I guess you would judge a resume, right? It's basically the
Uh,
same. Work references, past experience, those kind of things, and of course, like a method to the madness. Like if they are auditing things, how are they doing it? So I
yeah.
think Gokul has done like a fair amount of audits. I think he can maybe talk a bit more about this. So Gokul, what do you look for, man? How do you judge like auditing?
Yeah, Arjun, that's a very relevant question when you look at the authenticity of the audit team. One, you should look at their credentials, like past protocols which they have audited, like with the kind of and then perhaps some of them they could not, some of them you may not be able to disclose them. Some audits are private, but however, good audit teams demonstrate their good, I mean, really outstanding credentials in public. So you can look at what are the previous audits they have done, and you should also look at their toolkits that they are using. Like what are the kind of audit tools they are using? Are they like what is their like exposure to latest audit tools, like in the solidity and the not only solidity in the audit space. Like there are audit space is just not about the code vulnerability. You also look at the vulnerability in the bytecode, and you do also smart contract fuzzing. So it looks at, if you go and visit their website, you should know their, you should be able to understand their end-to-end awareness about audit and assurance in the blockchain space, from infrastructure audit to the identity audit. So it's a very holistic. You need to approach an auditor with a holistic perspective, who is very good mastery over the code level audit, the audit of the binaries, and audit of the like advanced methodologies like fuzzing. And if they know things like formal verification, that is really an advantage. So in the past, when I was working as an auditor, I worked with some clients where they were looking for one, speed, accuracy. There is always a trade-off between speed and accuracy. But if you are able to approach an auditor with good balance of speed and accuracy, would be the best fit for the market. And when what are the, so you should also be knowing how much experience they have and what all thought leadership they have produced. Like if they have produced reports on vulnerabilities in the past. So thought leadership, look at their toolkits, their technology, and their previous credentials. This helps you to understand the authenticity of the audit team.
And if you want to get any deep into it, how they actually do it, which information that they cannot give out, you can always sign an NDA before paying, right? You can get the information
Absolutely.
or you get into the real process. Yeah.
a very important thing because lot
Uh,
of conversation with.
I'm sorry, sir. Your voice is breaking in between.
Sorry, Harman, can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, I can hear you clearly.
What I was saying is, yeah, what you said is a very important point because many, like you, if you approach many auditors, they may not publish their interim audit reports. They will only share the final audit reports most of the time in their websites or in their presentations. So unless, so it is always good to have a very confidential, very like trusted conversation with the audit teams to fully evaluate their authenticity.
Exactly. Exactly, sir. But validating them definitely goes first in the list, top priority, right? You just can't get audited from any XYZ company. Practice audited. You need to have audit from a. Sorry, sir. Your voice was breaking. I think this is the problem with the platform today. All of our voices are breaking.
Yeah, because a streaming platform maybe it's easy to stream lots of channels same time.
Yeah, I
Am
think
I
maybe.
audible better now?
Yes, you are audible, sir.
I have another point. So you should also look at the three auditors.
I think
Insurance. They,
maybe I can close the video from my side and then okay. Sorry. Okay, he was waiting.
yeah,
So
I was.
sorry, Vaibhav, I didn't know that you were waiting in the room. Okay,
Can
sure.
you hear me, Herman?
Yes, we can. I can hear you, sir. Please.
Yeah. So I have one more point to add. It's like when you're approaching an auditor or looking an auditor for you should look at the you should be they should be a good fit. Whether like if you're going with a very niche protocol, you should look at an auditor who has experience on the specific domain. For example, you have come up with a synthetic synthetic aspect,
Derivative.
or
Yes.
you are doing something on insurance protocol, and
Yes.
then you should look at a auditor who has some domain exposure together with the technology. That could really help. And also, when you are like a protocol, if you are a general purpose auditor, you may look at this the how number of audits they have done on the traditional audit space. So you should always look at the mix of the good alignment with your protocol when you're selecting an auditor.
Exactly. So one question to the jury: when you are having a confidential conversation with the audit team, what are the kind of factors you should look out for from a technical aspect, right? From like what they use, like how they audit it in their process. Some key points, not all of the points. Obviously, we can't cover all of them, but some key points that must be there.
Yeah, like I said last time, I would like to see their past audit credentials with respect to the domain in which the contracts are written. One, and then their mastery over the tools. That is the second aspect I'll be very much looking up to, whether they have used the most mature tools and the advanced tools like the tools, basic tools like Slither, Mithril, and advanced fuzzing tools. The state the so mastery over the tools, and then their a number their I will also look at their published.
Okay. So whatever they have published, yes, that would also be there. Okay. I think your voice broke in between, but most of the things were clear. Thank you, sir. Yeah. Vaibhav, you also joined recently. I think we lost between. So, and any comments from your side?
Yeah, so like I'm getting on and off due to my network, but yeah, like I heard what Gokul said, and I really agree with all of the points that he made. Like he covered most of the stuff that I had to say, but yeah, like I just had the point. Like if you like, it's quite hard for the people who can't read code or like can't assess the
Exactly.
quality of the audit because like there's like even for a developer it's hard to like understand all the audits because like when you hire an audit firm it's usually because like you either have don't time or the ability to uh,
You
like
can do
assess
it
all
yourself.
the
Yeah.
vulnerabilities in your code.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why like you hire the audit firm, but like as a normal user if you can like the main things that you can see is like all the disclosures in terms of like what potential attacks can be done because like a lot of times uh, there's also a governance issue in terms of uh, in order to make things much more cleaner in terms of like managing the protocol. Like sometimes you prefer giving the governance to like not a multisig or a EOA. Like that happens a lot like sometimes, but that is sort of a red flag. And yeah, like if audit firms like also sees these kinds of like disclosures like, which are not actually technical but uh, sort of shows like how like the protocols can do a rug pull. Like that is something that normal people who don't need who don't understand how to read a code like they can like look at that.
Okay. Sure. Sure, Vib. Thank you for that input. It's obviously good to know about the non-technical side also because obviously all of us are not technical enough to understand the audit, and even the people who develop smart contracts, as you rightly mentioned, even they sometimes are not aware about what kind of audit technique should be there because they have not done it right. So this kind of thing is still in the loop, and they should look out for such things. Sure. So one thing, okay, this question, I think this is a question we all get irritated also enough for this, but this kind of thing is obviously in our mind. Why people do not get their smart contracts audited? Like it's simple. We have one reason that maybe they don't have enough funds, and we already had this answer for that. They can get a community audit, right? But what do you think is the primary reason, or what's holding them back from getting this smart contract audited? Is the lack of knowledge, or just something they don't want to do?
I think this has been like mentioned before that like by that like there's a sort of gap like sort of balance between go and the audit uh, because like there's a bull market like people don't
Okay.
want like uh,
So yeah, it's like if you have a
they
path
have the
breaking idea.
means of auditing.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, like it's quite so like I think
Okay. Okay. Arjun sir, any comments from you, please?
Oh, primary reason is money, or
Yeah.
rather, the ability to make money quickly is also what I've seen. So you can get community audits, no doubt, but that also takes time, and
Yeah.
I think there's a sort of a FOMO factor as well, right? Where you have a great idea, you want to execute quickly, and sometimes and of course many of the developers who do these things are skilled developers, like but as human beings, you tend to make mistakes sometimes.
Yeah.
and then those are where things go wrong. So several times developers feel that they've done a lot of good work, so they know what they're doing, but sometimes it just happens.
Yeah.
So so
I
this is
mean,
kind of how it is.
their
So
idea is path breaking until it's not.
it's basically that, and there's also like a level of carelessness sometimes, like for people who are not serious about building projects. They just feel that let's create a project. I want to make X amount of money. Once I've made that, things get hacked around, who the hell cares? Like some people have that mentality, and which is not right.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's why sometimes in DeFi, especially today, right? If you're investing your money in a DeFi project, it's so important to look at these things, like are the contracts audited, or are the developers have some sort of credibility, and have they done projects before, and at the same time, how tangible is the idea, and those are some of those things, and in this kind of a market where everybody's making money, sometimes I mean people don't tend to think the way think in a constructive manner. So that sometimes create problems. That's honestly like 99% of the reason why people don't get this done. It's just the lure of making quick money, and at the expense sometimes of the user. But then, of course, these things are, as the internet sometimes can be unforgiving. So if you're a developer, you don't get your contracts audited and things do go south, then, you likely your next project, nobody will invest in, or, those kind of things. So yeah, so people are getting smarter about this. I think last year there was a lot of craziness happening within DeFi. I think this year things are a lot more structured. And now that you have, like we talked about earlier, that you have centralized and players also looking at DeFi, like the BlackRocks of the world, and you have big banks now looking at this sector seriously. So you will begin to see some level of standardization, some level of process, and basically sort of a method to the madness of how Web3 tends to be. So that's I think so these things will improve. But then of course I think also as the user, it's your money, so you have to be very vigilant of where you're putting your money and what the credentials are. So just like how you would read, for example, before investing in any centralized financial product, right? Like any sort of investment scheme, you would look into it so that to check if it's a Ponzi scheme or not. Similarly, in a DeFi scheme, you need to look into how it works, what happens, and I think with that you can get you can make a better decision. So that's really how it is.
Exactly. That's totally. Gokul sir, I guess we lost you in between also. We were just talking about why people do not get this contract sorted. Why can't they just get it audited, right?
I think like I'll just add some point on this. So like as you guys said, like it's quite like whenever you are invest in any centralized finance instrument like a mutual fund or something like that, like you usually try to read up on everything that you can get about it. But like people, it's sort of like a mentality like in any new market where like people just think about like making money.
Yeah.
But this is something that's quite basic thing that like in sort of centralized finance space, like like there are some entities who like guard the space, but like even like in the decentralized space, like there's nobody guarding you, like you are on yourself. So like this is much more important in DeFi to like assess the security, like try to read on the security stuff of the products that you invest in, because like if you don't have the insurance, like you are not getting your money back if your like the protocol gets hacked or you lose your money in any way.
Exactly. So I guess we are well past the time. Even the speakers, they have a lot of work to do. And sorry, the flow was going so good that I couldn't stop in between. I wanted to discuss a few more things. So sorry for that. So maybe some angry remarks from each of you guys would be great for the audience.
So I think I'd just like to say that I think this is just the beginning of DeFi. Like I was saying earlier, it's just been in existence for 2 years. So I think the real meat of what a DeFi has to offer to the end user is something which is still which is still nascent. We're going to see a lot more interesting concepts come out, and we already seen that in Web3, where there's DeFi, then there's NFT plus DeFi, where there's a mix and match of how
Exactly.
you can cross-pollinate different ideas and sort of create value for the user. So I think we're going to see a lot more interesting use cases in the future. So I think it's going to be a very exciting space. And of course, audits are at the center of all of this. So it wouldn't be possible if sort of the smart contracts are not audited first. As all of us have said multiple times, if it's not audited, then it's not safe. So yeah. So I think we just at the tip of the iceberg of where DeFi is going to be. And yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more interesting things to come. So yeah, so I think the users should stay tuned and
Absolutely.
sort of keep that eye out for great opportunities, to sort of create some value. So yeah.
Absolutely, sir. Gokul, sir, your some angry remarks, please.
Can you hear me, Harman?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I lost the last part of the conversation. I just want to summarize that point. There are a lot of protocols which are not auditing because lack of awareness of the impact of vulnerabilities on reputation and the long-term potentials in the market and credibility. So if they are not auditing, give by any means gives you another third perspective, so another dimension to the code that you have written, the protocol that you have designed. So there is no reason why you don't want to audit it. Otherwise, you are. I would like to say it's either recklessness or carelessness. That's
Yeah,
the reason you are auditing your code. If you if you're writing cryptography like only like zk rollups or maybe very advanced cryptographic primitives, maybe an external audit you might not find the immediate value, but even there you have to bring in the niche auditors. So my point is, uh, audits are very essential if you are serious about making your DeFi protocol a good venture. Now, just let me summarize this. This conversation has been a great opportunity to brainstorm with some of the brightest minds in the ecosystem, and I really learned a lot and I really enjoyed it. And beyond all that, this particular event is one testimonial for the maturity of the blockchain ecosystem in India, especially across the startups in India. How much serious our blockchain startups are about security, scalability, and about DeFi in perspective. So I must say that we have a lot more to accomplish because I would say you have Matic Polygon is a great Indian story. Quillhash is a great Indian story. There are a lot of other good protocols in India who are also making their mark and milestone in India. So I am always, very happy about what now we are doing. We are as a nation, we are more than a nation, as a community, as a culture. We are creating our landmark in the world of decentralization. This is just the beginning for us. We have a lot more to accomplish. And even I must say, when it comes to things like scalability and security. I'm so happy to know that globally, the entrepreneurs and crypto investors are coming to India, like Quillhash and Polygon are just not they are good icons of it, but not only that, like India is becoming a really hot destination for blockchain security and scalability. The layer 2 success story and the audit success stories are huge testimonials of it. I wish we have more uh, heroes and heroines and success stories from India. Let us strive forward in this. I wish all the very best to this ecosystem.
and more blockchain influencers like yourself, sir.
My pleasure, always.
That's
Thank
great.
you.
Vaibhav, any angry remarks from you, please?
Yeah, so like just adding to the points that Gokul made, so, like yeah, like for the past few months, like I, so like since around 18 to mid 2020, like I wasn't involved much into the sort of like crypto space, like in terms of like DeFi. But like in the past few months that I've been working in DeFi, like I've seen a lot of Indian like there was like that have been coming up, like that I've been seen in Portfolio and like other like fellowship platforms. So like I do see a lot of potential in like the developers of India, and like I really want to see like more like sort of icon projects like Cool Hash and like Polygon. Like this is like what we look up to, and yeah, like I do expect more such platforms coming in from India.
Great. That's really great. Yes. Okay, so I think we can wrap up. This has been really an amazing virtual conference on DeFi security. Even I got to learn a lot of things. I'm just going to, after I go offline, I'm going to look into that thing that Arjun sir mentioned. And definitely going to look into all of that, the success story of Nexus. Uh, so I guess we can wrap up. Thank you all for attending this conference, and I hope you guys learned a lot from our experienced and renowned jury members. And thank you to the jury members for being a part of this conversation and sharing your knowledge. And lastly, thank you to Quill Audits and RazorSec for their efforts to establish this kind of conference. As Gokul sir mentioned, that this is the proof that okay, India is moving towards a better place in DeFi, and it may become a hot zone. It already is kind of a hot zone. Okay, thank you guys.